Today, I have an immense pleasure and honor to welcome Wei Yang, the president of Town Planning Institute in the United Kingdom. So tune in as we discuss emerging trends and challenges in city development post-COVID-19 and explore what inclusion is, according to Wei. Welcome to Inclusive Urban Futures, Wei Yang. I have an absolute pleasure and honor to have you today. You are the president of the Royal Town Planning Institute in the United Kingdom. So hello to you in London from Paris.
Hi.
Your professional story is really inspiring as well as your personal story. And I believe that your story can inspire us to be braver and to do better. So I just wanted to start this conversation of ours by asking you to tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Thank you. It's my great pleasure to join you today. As you said, I'm the president of the Royal Town Planning Institute in the UK. So I'm a town planner and an urban designer. The RTPI is the professional body. Actually, it's the first professional planning body in the world, established in 1914. And then we are now one of the largest professional bodies in the world. We have more than 26,000 members in over 80 countries worldwide. So myself, I was trained as an architect initially in China, and my degree was very much on urban design, mass planning, and also town planning. And then I went to England to study my master's and a PhD degree in late 1990s. And then since then, I stayed in the UK. Now I have been here for more than 20 years.
You're also an owner of a very successful planning company, planning and urban design company, with very, very kind of broad portfolio. And I was just wondering what inspired you to join and lead RTPI?
Yes, it's quite an interesting story because I started to work in the UK from 2004 as an urban designer and later became a senior manager in the company. But because I had the research background, so I always feel there's a strong kind of missing point between the research and practice. So when I set up my own company, I felt very strongly I really want to foster the connection between research and the practice. And then the more I do, the more I realize the importance of that. And also I realized, although my company is quite successful, we have been working on large scale mass plans, but I realized as a practitioner, I spend more time to convince politicians or my clients rather than doing my job. So I feel the planning profession is little understood by the wider public. So I'm really keen to work with the professional institute to make public understand the planning profession better and then to give a voice to the profession.
And what is your mission? Is that your mission, or you can broaden up the statement of your mission as the president?
Yes, that's my favorite question. Yes. So as the president, I actually, for my election, I took it very seriously. So I wrote my manifesto. And then I thought why I want to be the president, because I want to call for a revival of the spirit to modernize the planning profession. Because the modern planning profession started about 100 years ago. But now we have different new technologies we can use, and we have quite a slightly different set of challenges we are facing. So how the profession should be progressed and modernized to address these challenges and how we can work better with the public. I think these are the things urgently need to be addressed. And also the reason the planning profession kind of was started more than 100 years ago was really about the people's health and well-being. So, but this spirit, I think is somehow not very clearly communicated, even within the planning profession. So that's why I think we need a revival of spirit and to bring the confidence back to the profession. So in terms of actions, I want to enhance public appreciation of the planning profession. That's my number one priority. And then second priority is on strengthen international collaboration on capacity building and also contribute to immediate actions on climate and biodiversity emergency. Also, I see the need to urgently engage young planners, young people to adopt new technology to empower the modernization of the planning profession. So these are my priorities.
Fascinating. And I just thought that you're really the great person to ask now after 2020 and 2021, after this crisis of COVID-19 that changed many things. What are the trends in city and urban development that you see from your side, from the planning side?
Yeah, I think the pandemic actually, and also the consequent accelerated digitization of our lives, I think will have fundamental implications on land use and transport planning. So we have to really consider these future trends in planning policies and planning practice. So now we have a different live work and education pattern. And also, I think because of the pandemic, people realize the importance of community. So the community spirit and community support have become very important. People realize the importance of that. And because of that, actually, because when you listen to the news, then people discuss about various issues, although they may not mention planning, but public health and healthy living, about accessibility to open space and how to go to work, but whether it's through public transport or whether it's through private vehicles, actually all relates to planning. So I think the planning issue has become a quite important issue top on the agenda of all the governments. And so, another aspect is the importance of equality, because I think COVID-19 actually exposed the inequality under the sunshine. Because before we do talk about inequality issues, but not in a very evidence-based manner. So we do sense something like that, but we don't have all the data and being really displayed to the public. But I think the COVID-19 really shows actually there's a strong connection between the social and economic inequality and the spatial inequality. So you can see the high COVID-19 death toll relates to the social and economic inequality before the pandemic. So it's not only the disease itself actually created all this problem. What's the problem underneath accelerated this problem? So I think equality issues has become very high on the agenda of everybody's mind.
How does inclusion connect with this concept of equality, according to you, if at all?
Yeah, very much so. Right. Inclusion and inequality and equality, they are directly connected. For example, during COVID-19 lockdown time, lots of people work at home. So when you work at home, you with internet access, it means you have access to jobs, education, goods, service, and even entertainment. But it does not mean your access to light, public space, clean air. So I think location become less significant, but the digital inclusion and the spatial equality have become priorities. So some people, they are being marginalized or discriminated because they don't have good internet access. Just using that as a simple example. So equality and inclusivity, how it's going to relate to how they are going to relate to planning is a very big issue we need to consider. And you also about how the say for example we talk about the accessibility to green space from different communities. So before we can all maybe go to parks or countryside or go to national parks. But during a lockdown, the green space on your doorstep has become very important. So how we can make sure that spatial equality and inclusivity is there, again, is very important.
Absolutely. And I thought to ask you what change, if any, is required from the planning profession to respond to changes ahead effectively? And how should the planning profession in Britain and internationally evolve to meet these challenges? What is still missing, according to you?
Yeah, I think first of all we need the two sides of we need to think about from two different aspects. One is the diversity within the planning profession, because I think at the moment I don't think the planning profession is representative enough to our community. So that's number one priority. We need to open doors and encourage more young people from diverse backgrounds to join the profession. That's number one. And then number two is we need to build strong connections with the wider public through listening and two-way communications. Because quite often, planners, we could have one-way communication. So we can't say tell the community what's going to happen. But equally, we need to listen to them more. And through the pandemic, there was a trend is people, they feel strongly about their community. And because they use their community and local area much more, and they are very keen to get involved in the future decision making. So how to engage the community, and the more people are willing to be engaged. So really how to design that mechanism to make sure people's voice are properly listened is very important.
What have been some of the positive, trends that you see in this direction, if any?
Yeah, I think I already touched on that. I think it's people realize the importance of planning and realize the importance of the neighborhood. Because before, for example, quite a lot of people are relying on cars or other facilities. For example, I work in London. I live outside London. So I used to go to London daily. And then if I need to buy clothes or buy anything, I normally buy it in London. So I won't really go to my local village shop. But now, because of the COVID, we use our local facilities much more. So people realize the importance of the local facility. That's the 15 minutes neighborhood has become a quite a popular concept. So people start realize we need to build our community to have that support. And also within my neighborhood, before, because we were all busy go to work, so we never had chance to have a proper conversation or communication with our neighbors. But because with pandemic, we are meeting or seeing our neighbors more than ever before. So there are lots of people when they need support, we are much willing to support the neighborhood, help each other, and there are lots of shared communications or shared facilities between our neighbors. So you do see that community spirit coming out so strongly. So I think that's a positive side. And then what we can learn from that is we have to prepare for that. So how, when we design new communities or think about regeneration of the existing communities, how we can think in advance.
I think that to completely share your view on this revival of the neighborhood, because I think that before COVID, we were in fact a bit disconnected from, like, everything was disconnected with everything. You had, some I think we had this life where there was a part of life dedicated to work, and then there was part of life dedicated to family, and maybe there was part of life if we know the neighbors that dedicated the community. This pandemic, the positive thing is that they brought us together. I think that before you touched a very interesting question, especially for our audience, and that is question of diversity within the profession. Because our neighborhoods, especially Paris and London, are in fact diverse.
Yes.
And I think that you're absolutely right that there are that diversity is not necessarily represented in the planning profession or many others. So I just wanted to ask you the question, like more of like a conceptual, theoretical question. What does inclusion mean to you? If you had an open canvas to define it, what does it mean to you?
I think inclusion is quite interesting because we talk about diversity, and also we talk about inclusion and inclusivity. Actually, they are two different concepts. So diversity means, for example, if I use the example of within an organization, we could say we have a quite diverse group of people. But actually, diversity doesn't mean you are going to listen to everybody. So inclusivity means you have a very inclusive approach to listen different people's opinions and then try to get everybody on board. So this inclusivity is very important. And if we talk about say inclusivity or inclusion in a wider extent, I think we need to think about globally because the challenge we face at the moment is so surreal. And for example, like the climate change, biodiversity decline, and the social inequality is not something one single country can resolve on its own. So we need this international collaboration and inclusivity to tackle all these challenges together. So I think that's the biggest inclusivity or inclusion we need to think about.
And I think now I want to talk to you as a fellow global traveler. You went from China to the UK, so you engineering your own inclusion. I went from Yugoslavia to Israel to the UK to France, trying to create my own. So I just wanted to ask you, what can we learn from your experience of kind of leading in a country that is not of your birth? I call that leaders without borders. So leading in it, what does it mean leading in a country that is not of your birth? And what can we learn from you to do inclusion better?
I think for me, I don't see boundaries. I don't see country boundaries. I don't see race boundaries, gender boundaries, and also professional boundaries. I think we just see human beings. So being, say, I was born in China and I came here 20 years ago and studied in Britain and stayed here. I think for me, because of my unique background, I think I see things from a quite a different perspective. And also because, say, UK is a developed country and China is a developing country. So I think I can see the past, the present, and the future. And then it's very interesting. You see history repeats itself. So something happened, for example, in Britain before in terms of urbanization. Now it's happening in other developing countries. So I think this unique perspective to constantly compare the past and the present and the future, I think give me a very unique point of view. I think that's really strengthened my professional position. And also because of that, I think I have a quite a long-term vision to think about the importance of the planning profession because I'm able to see how the profession started, the foundation, the spirit of it, and I can see why it's now slightly missing or being misunderstood. That's why I think actually I'm in a quite unique leadership position to say this is how it should be. We should never forget why we started, and then let's carry on, rekindle the founding spirit.
Yes, I completely agree with this line. We should not forget why we started. What are the potential advantages the COVID-19 represents in pursuing diversity and inclusion in planning profession? And what are still the challenges to overcome?
I think the COVID exposed the inequality issue quite widely. So I think there is an urgent, actually, the urgent request from the public for more inclusive and also green recovery from the COVID-19. So that's very clear. And the potential danger is if the government, they only think about short-term target, and we have the danger to go back to the old track, only focus on economic development or economic growth. But we have to really understand we have a boundary of our planet, the nature boundary, and also the capacity boundary. So our economic growth have to consider all these restrictions. I think that's the urgent priority. We need to realize actually how we should have a green recovery in the future. So we cannot really go back to the old track anymore.
This new, we speak definitely about climate change, biodiversity, but what I see in the business world, for instance, is increasing interest in inclusion. But to my to my analysis, actually, what I see is that there are not so many people informing the policy world regarding inclusion that personally or professionally had to engineer their own. So I'm just wondering what is your view on this, and what is the benefit of inclusion? What for those who challenge this concept? I mean, what are the benefits?
Yeah, I think the benefit. Yeah, I think the benefit is from every single aspect, because first of all, having have an inclusive community really can support everyone. So not only the poor but also the rich. So when we have a much more inclusive community, and then everybody can enjoy their life better. And also, it's about well-being and happiness, because I think we all want to be happy, and we want to have a healthy life. So there's a study actually carried out by Harvard University. It's the longest research being carried out in history. So they followed two groups of people for 75 years, and they realized actually the key factor relates to happiness is not really about wealth and position. It's about your healthy social relationship. So really how to cultivate that healthy social relationship is actually inclusion. So when we have an inclusive society, it's a healthy society, and everybody will feel happy. And then planning is people centric. So planning is really about how to create that ideal community so everybody can enjoy their life.
I completely agree with you. For me, inclusion would be ability to contribute. I think that this ability to give a way to diverse people to in fact contribute, nothing more.
Yeah, definitely.
To give a part of their own richness and enhance the system. And I think that this is a very good time to talk about it, because according to the UN, there are over 200 million people right now in the world, and that don't live in the country where they were born. And we all live in global cities. And as you said, the COVID-19 has exposed inequality, and that's what we painfully felt everywhere. I was just moving toward the end of the interview. I wanted to ask you, maybe repeating myself, what are the necessary steps, according to you, to achieve more city inclusion on the city level in results of urban planning? More of like, how can the results of the planning work ensure that we achieve or move toward inclusive urban futures?
Yes, it's a very important question to ask. I think all the politicians, they should ask this question. I think how to say that? I think we need a systems and a multidisciplinary approach to consider our cities or urban and rural development, because I think at the moment we have so many different silos. We have different departments looking after different aspects. I was listened to a radio interview one day. It was very interesting. A few speakers, they were talking about COVID-19, the impact on the public health. And then one speaker, he said, actually, our public health service should call public disease service because it's not about health. It's really about when somebody gets sick, how we can look after him in hospital or in our medical centers. So what is public health? Public health is about our where we live and then place we live, work, and play. So this is planning. So having an inclusive society for our future cities, towns, and villages, we need to have this systems approach. And all the different disciplines, professionals, politicians, general public, we have to work together. So we really have to break these silos because we have one single ultimate target. We want to live healthy and happy. I think that's all we want to achieve. And then it's not about money. So economic development, although it's important, but it's only part of the story. That has to be seen altogether with other aspects. And also, I think we should value social capital because we now there's a term called natural capital. But actually, social capital is also important. We need to invest in social capital. For example, if you have a child, then if they grow up in a very healthy area, when they grow up, they can contribute to the society in a positive way. But if they don't live in an inclusive society, they may become criminals. So they will give negative impact to the society. So I think for the future, because I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the planning profession, because it's about future, our future generations' future. So it's nothing more important than our future generations' future. That's why inclusivity, inclusion is so important.
I just wanted to ask you if there was one important message that you would like to highlight to our audience, what would it be?
I think again, I want to emphasize the point about future, because I think as planners, we plan for the future and we learn with the future. So we should be leaders and a positive driving force to help communities navigate change and prepare for an uncertain future. So I believe the fundamental objective of the planning profession is to create a balanced system for people, nature, and society to coexist in harmony. So I want to emphasize this future point. That's what planning is all about.
Thank you very much, Wei Yang, the president of the Royal Town Planning Institute in London. Thank you very much for your time and your insight. It has been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
You were listening to the podcast Inclusive Urban Futures with Honor Rosenfeld. Please stay tuned for the next episode.